Chapter 1. In the autumn of 1924, we, my brother, sister, and I, were taken to the country to live with our grandmother, our father's mother. I have never known why our parents took us to live with her. Our parents didn't move with us. They stayed in the city of Pretoria, where they both worked. I was 5 years old. We went to live in a little village called Maupaneng, about 75 miles from Pietersburg in northeastern Transvaal. I felt very lonely during my first few weeks in the village. My grandmother was big and stern and sat all day under a tree next to our hut. She never spoke kindly to me. She frightened me. The mountain near the village frightened me, and the darkness frightened me too. My parents bought 2 goats for us. I was happy because the goats seemed to know that we needed their company. They tickled our hands when they ate the leaves, which we gave them. One of the other families in the village kept their goats with ours. Sometimes a boy from that family and I looked after them, and sometimes we went to school. We had to walk 7 miles to school and 7 miles back. The school was one huge class in a big hall where we chanted multiplication tables and the spellings of words. The teachers sometimes beat us with a stick, so when I thought of school, I thought of pain. I hated school, and I preferred to help my grandmother and uncle in the fields. Sometimes they let me help them plow the fields and chase away the birds from the crops, but only when they were very busy. I didn't believe I ought to go to school every day. None of the children did, but my family really wanted me to learn. "You didn't go to school today, Asiki. I can see it in your eyes," my grandmother said one day. "I did, Granny," I replied. "Don't lie to me," she said in a bad mood. My uncle, who lived with us, came in. "You were not in school, Asiki, and you'd better not lie about it," he said. He was so tall that he was like a tree standing over me. It was true. I hadn't been to school. I had been in the mountains with my friends all day. My uncle beat me. Sometimes I went with my friends to the river, the Lishona. It was a broad river with white sand. It was a tame river except when it rained. Then it was fierce, this river. We boys went there in the moonlight and fought each other, or we hunted hares and rabbits. We came back at dawn and we laughed when someone was frightened by the noise of an owl. The communal fireplace was an important place. Men and boys of the village met there to talk, away from women and girls. We, the boys, had to bring wood for the fire. We brought it from the veld when we brought back our goats. We learnt a lot at the fireplace, though at the time we didn't know that we were learning. We learnt about history, tradition, and customs, and the way to behave in a community. The old men told stories. When the Swazis fought with Bapedi, when we lived under Boer rule. Old Sagone was a great storyteller. He told us the story of Thema, a boy from a Christian family like ours. Thema had learnt that Jesus was our brother and that he died for us all. But trouble came for Thema when he went to the city to work for a white man. He came back and said that men were not brothers in the city. In the city, the black man must enter the white man's house through the back door. The black man cleans the streets, but he mustn't walk on the pavement. The black man builds houses for the white man, but he cannot live in them. The black man cooks the white man's food, but he only eats what is left over. "Thema shocked us," said old Sagone. He said, "Don't listen to anyone who tells you that black men and white men are brothers." And he said, "I don't know why Jesus Christ wasted his time teaching mankind." When I look back to the first 13 years of my life, I think that the time was wasted. Nobody shaped those years into a definite pattern. I search for a pattern now, and I remember a few things clearly. My grandmother, the mountain, the tropical darkness. I remember the long, black tropical snakes, the fierce Lashwana River, the heavy rains and the heat. But probably I lived a life shared by all country boys. Country boys know only one purpose in life: to be. I remember what we ate. Often our crops failed and we didn't have much to eat. Mother sent us a few tins of jam and we ate that with cornmeal porridge. Sometimes she sent us sugar, which we ate with porridge. Other times we cooked flying ants or hairy tree worms. The only time we tasted tea and bread was when our mother came to see us each Christmas. If the hunting was bad, we didn't eat meat. We had 50 goats, but we didn't often kill one. I also remember the vermin. The bugs and lice were a nightmare. My grandmother had very clean habits. So did the rest of the people. But no one ever thought they could do anything about the bugs. They were big, flat, gray bugs, which fell from the grass roof at night onto the mud floor of our hut. You scratched your naked body and you heard other people scratching too. But you couldn't catch the bugs on your body. In winter, the bugs disappeared, and in summer, they came back. It never occurred to anyone that there might be a vermin killer. We had one set of clothing for Sundays, but on weekdays we wore rags. This was strange because Mother was a very good dressmaker. She sent clothes to our grandmother, but our grandmother never gave them to us. She hid them away because she wanted us to be tough. When my mother finally found the clothes, they were too small for us. I had to wear rags for weeks and weeks, and they became a nest for lice. I sat out on the veld, picked off the eggs, and crushed the lice between my fingernails. But I don't remember being ill very often. Sometimes I ate too many prickly pears and had a stomach ache, but that was all. Chapter 2. Into the Slums. When I was about 12, I noticed something that was happening in our part of northeastern Transvaal. Young men were leaving the villages to work in the city of Pretoria. At Christmas, they came back to visit. They wore smart clothes and told us about the excitement of city life, the money. They earned £3 a month, the electric lights, the trams, and motor cars. Children didn't usually see these things until they were old enough to go to the city. Because the younger men went to the city, there were mostly middle-aged women, and old men in our village. They did not have much land. The old men always complained that the white man had taken away most of it, and they sat by the fire and looked helpless. I never dreamt that I would go back to the city. Then, in the middle of the year, my mother came. She had come to take us back to Pretoria. I remember 3 things about the next few days. Firstly, my grandmother cried. Secondly, my mother took away our rags and gave us new clothes. Thirdly, I remember the bright lights on Pietersburg Station after a long journey on a dusty road. I was confused most of the time. At last, we got to Pretoria Station and we went in a taxi to Marabastad, a black location. And that is how a country boy came to the city. My other grandmother, my mother's mother, my Aunt Dora, and 3 uncles lived on 2nd Avenue, and we stayed with them for a few days. Then, my brother and sister and I went to live on 5th Avenue in one room with my mother and father. I was now 13 years old. My brother was 3 years younger than me, and my sister was 5 years younger. I noticed quickly that things were not right between my mother and father. They argued a lot about money. My mother worked hard. She made dresses for a tailor during the day, and in the evening, she made beer which she sold. My father did not bring any money home. He drank the beer my mother made with his friends. My mother got very angry, but she couldn't do anything about it. My father was a violent man with a thin and bony face that I didn't like. He limped all the time because he had hurt his leg in an accident when he was younger. He did not play with us often, and we stayed close to my mother most of the time. There were 5 people in our room, but there was a 6th companion: fear. I don't want that man here again. Do you hear me, Eva? My father said one evening. He was talking about the man who lived in the next room. He's your friend, and you know he comes here to drink, my mother answered. She told us to go outside, as she often did when my father got angry. Don't talk to me like that. Didn't your mother teach you not to answer back to your husband? We heard him say. You started the argument, Moses. We looked through the window. My father hit my mother. A crashing slap made her fall on her knees. I'll kill you, I tell you, he shouted. We didn't sleep well that night. Why does father do this to you always, mother? I asked one day. I don't know, son, she replied. She didn't really want to talk about it. She never complained to us. I hated my father, and so did my brother and sister. Once he called us to him. It was a drunken call. Asaki girlie, Solomon. He put his arms round us. I brought you sweets, see? From the town. My mother laughed. Then she laughed again when he said, Remember you're my oldest child, Asaki. You are my heir and you will inherit everything I have. Don't let anyone cheat you out of it. I slowly learnt from my mother why she had brought us to the city from Mopaneng. My father had refused to give her any money for us. She had reported him to the native commissioner. The commissioner had advised her to get us from the country. If the children live with you and their father, he will remember to pay for them, he had said. My mother had to report regularly to the commissioner. She told me not to worry. You're young and these things are too heavy for your small shoulders, she said. I remember one Sunday morning. Sunday was the day when we stayed in bed, wrapped in our blankets. The gas from the Primus stove made a soft noise. There was a good smell of meat, potatoes, and curry from a pot on the stove. I was thinking of Maupanang. I was thinking of the big dark mountains, the fields, my friends, and the old men telling stories. I could see through the window that it was cloudy. I hated clouds then, and I still hate clouds today. They made me feel sad and gray, in Maupanang and in Pretoria. I heard running footsteps. I suddenly stopped daydreaming, and my brother woke up. My mother ran into the room and tripped over a piece of wood. She fell on her knees near the door. My father ran into the house behind her, and we knew he was chasing her. She stayed on her knees, and I knew she had hurt herself. I'll show you who I am, my father shouted. What's the matter with you, Moses? What are you doing? She said. Get up, he shouted. I can't. My knee hurts, my mother cried. This is the day when you are going to do what I tell you. He limped over to the pot on the stove and poured the contents of the pot over her. My mother screamed in a voice I have never forgotten. Hot potatoes and meat and curry covered her blouse. Then my father caught hold of her blouse with one hand and crashed the pot onto her head with the other. It made a heavy sound, like a large bell. She freed herself from him and ran out of the door, crying. At last, I realized what was happening and ran for help. An ambulance took my mother to hospital, and the police arrested my father. We packed our bags and went to live with my grandmother on 2nd Avenue. A few weeks later, my mother came out of hospital. I went with her to court for the trial of my father, and my mother told the magistrate the story of that Sunday morning and many other things about my father. The magistrate sentenced him to 14 days in prison or a fine. I don't remember how much the fine was, but I know he paid the money. The summer of 1932 was the last time I ever saw my father. The strong smell of burning gas from a Primus stove often reminds me of that Sunday morning. 3. Marabastad location. The water from our communal tap ran very slowly into containers. Everyone had to wait in a queue at the water tap. The water trickled into tin cans, buckets, and dishes, and the people waited. Sometimes you heard someone make a noise of impatience. Sometimes people argued. Sometimes they laughed and gossiped. Some people sat on their tins, and some people fed their babies. It was like this in 2nd Avenue. And you knew that it was like this at every communal water tap in Marabastad. The houses were a little like our tin cans too, because they were made of corrugated iron. The streets were straight and the houses stood very close together. Each house had a fence made with posts and wire that didn't stand up straight. The fences swayed like drunken men. Most houses had a veranda with a mud floor. The verandas had roofs which were unevenly supported with 4 wooden poles. The backyards of the houses were usually dirty, though people swept them continually with grass brooms. Most of the people with houses rented rooms to a family or to single people, so there might be several families' coal braziers burning in the same yard. In the mornings and afternoons, Marabastad was always covered by a blanket of smoke from these braziers. There was a white superintendent of the location who we called Rostand. We only saw him when we went to pay our 14 shillings rent, or when he drove up the main road, Barber Street. Otherwise, the location seemed to belong to the police. The dirty water, the flies, the dead cats and dogs and children's feces. We didn't see many white people. We saw the white superintendent and the police, and white ministers from the Methodist or Anglican churches, or sometimes a school superintendent. A white person never came to the location unless he was in charge of something. I never thought that this was strange. I don't think any other Marabastad resident thought this was strange either. For a while, Marabastad was like a foreign country to my brother and sister and me. Why did people build houses in a straight line? Why did they build fences between houses? Why did adults go to the toilet in a bucket in a small building? We asked ourselves these things. It was very different from Maupaneng. In the village, houses didn't stand in straight lines. People visited one another. They told stories around the communal fire. But gradually we realized that there was a community in Marabastad. The people didn't seem to be interested in one another, but they were. We slowly got used to life on 2nd Avenue. My mother, Aunt Dora, and 3 uncles were born in eastern Transvaal. Aunt Dora, her 3 children, and the 3 uncles lived with us and our grandmother. Mother, who was the eldest, worked in one of the white suburbs of Pretoria as a servant. She lived there and came to see us on 2 Sundays in a month. We had 2 rooms. One room was a bedroom. One room, which had a table and 4 chairs, was both a bedroom and a sitting room. There were 2 other rooms in the house which we rented to tenants. There was a 10-foot-wide yard all round the house. Flowers wouldn't grow in the yard, but we did have a grapevine creeper, which gave shade to the person who was doing the washing. There was a path from the gate to the front and to the back of the house. This was made with mud and animal dung, and small pebbles were pressed into it in a pattern. We planted maize in the front yard, and about 7 corn cobs grew each year. We children were given half a cob each to eat, which we cooked on the back veranda. In the morning, we had coffee. Afterwards, we often had mealy meal porridge made from food left over from last night's supper. After school, I had to clean our house because Grandmother and Aunt Dora did white people's washing all day to earn money. I had to make a fire and buy a small piece of meat, usually about 1 pound in weight, from an Indian butcher's shop in the Asiatic Reserve. There were so many of us in the family that I had to cook porridge twice in the same big pot. On weekdays, our supper was simple, porridge and meat. But when there was no money, we fried tomatoes. On Sundays, we ate some vegetables with our meat. We only had butter when we had visitors. We bought 3 pence worth. Then our grandmother gave each child 1 slice of bread with a thin layer of butter on it. The adults ate their meals from saucers while we children shared a plate. We never sat at the table to eat. On Monday mornings at about 4 o'clock, I went to the white suburbs to collect washing for Grandmother and Aunt Dora. On Thursday and Friday afternoons, I had to take the washing back. Sometimes I could borrow a bike, but other times I had to walk. It was about 7 miles, and I carried the bundles of washing on my head. I had a pair of tennis shoes, but I was not allowed to wear these on weekdays. They were for Sundays. In the winter, my bare feet hurt. One winter morning, I was cycling home from Waterkloof suburb with a large bundle of washing on the handlebars. I was wearing a thin jacket, and I was very, very cold. From the opposite direction, a group of white boys came cycling towards me. I couldn't turn the handlebars very well because of the washing. I crashed into the first boy, who fell onto the next boy, and he then fell onto the boy next to him. My bicycle hit the pavement and I fell off. "Bastard!" shouted the boy who had fallen off first. His friends all came and kicked and cursed me. Then they rode away. They left me on the ground in pain and in the cold. The bicycle had a bent front wheel. My friends laughed when I told them. "You country sheep, that's your first lesson. You've got to go about town with your eyes open," one of them said. Chapter 4. Saturday night. It was a Saturday night. The streetlights were on, and there was a misty light over Marabastad. Everyone was watchful, especially the women. I was watching for the light from torches. I think now that the torchlight was very threatening. It was always like this for us. Saturday night and police torches, Saturday night and police whistles, Saturday night and screams, Saturday night and cursing from the white man. And I was only 13. We made beer at our house. We put the beer into large oil cans. The white man did not allow the black man to have beer, so the oil cans had to be hidden. I watched for the policeman's torch. If a policeman came, the beer had to be put in a hole in the ground quickly. It was always like this. The white man did not let the black woman make beer, even though she used the money to pay for her children to go to school. "Go and watch outside," my aunt told me. "Dig the hole deep," said my mother. "Stamp hard on the earth." It was always like this. You are on the white man's land. You must do his washing. You must buy bread from him with the money he pays you. You must live in houses built by him. He must control your area. One night, I was waiting outside the house for the last oil can of beer from my mother when I heard heavy footsteps. She handed me the oil can through the window before the footsteps came round the corner into the backyard. I threw the can over the fence into a big container of dirty water. A white policeman and an African policeman came round the corner, and suddenly there was a blinding white light in my face. I was terrified, and my body shook. And my body. "What are you doing here, my young?" the big white policeman asked in Afrikaans. He switched off his terrible light. "Nothing," I said. "How can you stand here alone and do nothing, Kafir?" I said nothing. I thought about my mother in the house, clearing away the evidence of beer making. "What was that I heard when I came in?" asked the white policeman. "I was throwing a stone at a dog," I answered. I had to keep them in the yard until my mother had tidied up inside. "Hold the bastard's arms behind his back, Jonas," said the white policeman. Then his big white hand crashed into my cheek. I fell against a fence pole, and the black man pulled me away so hard that my side hurt. "Are you going to tell me the truth, Kafir?" the white policeman asked. I didn't answer. I didn't care now. Let anything happen, I thought. The back of the white policeman's hand hit me across my mouth. While I held my mouth, he got hold of my neck and pressed my face against his other hand. I couldn't breathe. "That was for your lies, Kafir," he said, and he pushed me away from him. I fell down on the ground. Then the sound of their footsteps became quieter. I felt sick. Everything became black in front of me. But the people in Marabastad continued to make beer. The police continued to raid the location and destroy the beer. Chapter 5. School and Friends. Everybody knew that schools in the country were not very good, so they did not expect me to be good at the school in the location. The class teacher, the principal, and my aunt all said I was backward, so I had to believe it. They put me in Standard 3, not Standard 4, the standard which was right for my age. I didn't think that they could be wrong. I was in a class of 80 children. In the first test, I was 77th in the class, and no one at home was surprised. At last, I went up to Standard 4. The class teacher had a nickname, Kuzwi. He was a small man who beat us very often with a cane. He rang the bell to start the class when we were a long way from the school. He did this to make us late for class. Then he beat us. If you were 50th in one test and 51st in the next one, he caned you. If you cycled to school, he caned you because you didn't walk there. We were very happy when we went up to Standard 5 and had a different teacher. Life in the city still surprised me. One day I was with my friend Molloy, who lived next door. He was a happy person who liked to sing. We were going to the movies and I stopped to look up at a tall building, which wasn't finished yet. "Come on, you sheep," Molloy said. "We're going to be late. Haven't you ever seen a building?" The building was as high as the mountains back in Maupanang, and I was a bit frightened. "Don't you think it will fall over soon, Molloy?" I asked. "Don't be silly. These white people are clever, you know. They do all the thinking about these things," Molloy said. "What do you mean? The blacks do all the work in the north where I come from," I replied. "This is not the north, chum," he said. "I tell you, The whites do all the thinking here. Like the man who gave me a slap at the market this morning? I asked. Yes, chum, said Malloy, and he laughed and laughed. The market manager had slapped me on the back of my head that morning. Malloy and I had been picking up carrots and overripe tomatoes when he caught us. We were going to eat them while we pushed a cart of vegetables to the suburbs for a white customer. I had been hungry and depressed all day. Was life always going to be like this? But I forgot my hunger and depression when we got to the movies. We saw a lot of movies for 4p. They were silent films, and we saw lots of funny actors like Harold Lloyd, Charlie Chaplin, and Buster Keaton. We stood on our chairs and cheered, and a piano played noisy tunes. I read the dialogue and titles from the screen for the other boys. When I did this, I felt big and important and useful. Often I didn't have money for the movies. Then one of the boys paid for me so that I could read for them. I had gone into business. How do you read so fast? Asked Molloy. Because I can, I said mysteriously. It's no use asking you anything, he answered. He was angry with me. The truth was that I read everything. I picked up any piece of paper to read. I felt inferior to my classmates at school because I was not very good at English and all our lessons were in English. But I read and read. I felt proud because soon I would not be backward anymore. A group of boys from 2nd Avenue used to meet on the stoop of a shop on Barber Street after school. We called ourselves the Foxes. There was me and Molloy, Little Lynx and China, Ratau and Donnie, the noisiest boy on 2nd Avenue, and a few other boys. There was also Isaac, who came from Bantool, another location 2 miles away. He went to school with us and liked to play with the foxes. We talked about school and the cane. There were 3 Chinese shops and 5 Indian shops along Barber Street. The Chinese shops were grocery shops built from corrugated iron. The Indian shops were bigger buildings, built from brick, and Abdul's was one of these. There was fruit in one window, and in the other window, there were dusty plates and tiny toys. There was always a lovely spicy smell. At night, when the alarm for the curfew went at 10 minutes to 10, Abdul's servants covered the windows with wooden shutters and iron bars. There was a curfew on Africans from 11 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. One day we were standing on the stoop when a girl walked past. We had never seen her before. She walked quickly, swinging her arms as if she might be able to fly. Who's she? Molloy asked. She's the new girl who moved into our street with her father yesterday. Don't you know that? Replied China, as if everyone should know. She's got a cheek, she has, said Molloy, quite angrily. Why? I asked. She came to this place yesterday. She hasn't asked where the shops are, or where the school is, or where the police station is, said Molloy. Perhaps she comes from the Rand, suggested Ratau. My father says nobody asks anybody anything on the Rand, Lynx said. The Rand's a strange place, said China. I've got an idea, Foxes, said Molloy. If she asks you anything, look away. Is that agreed? Yes, everyone answered. When she passed us, again there was silence. She walked down Barber Street, round the corner, and into 2nd Avenue, and she didn't notice us. What a cheeky face, I thought. We soon got to know about the new girl, Rabone, and her father, Dinku Dikai. Ma Labona, who lived across the street from us, came to talk about them to my grandmother. She always came to talk to my grandmother when she wanted to gossip. Everybody says he's a very rich man, said Malabona. But he doesn't look like a rich man, Hibala. I said to him that we are happy to see them and we hope they will be happy in our quiet street. And do you know what, Hibala? Uh-huh, said my grandmother. The little girl looked at me straight in the face, Malabone continued. She looked as if she was going to say, I'll scratch your eyes out if you come near my father. You wouldn't want to be with him, would you? Aunt Dora asked. Dora, how can you say such a thing? She replied. She was shocked. Rabone's father was about 40 years old when they came to 2nd Avenue, and Rabone was the same age as the Foxes, 13. Dinku Dike was strong with broad shoulders and big arms, but Rabone was small and cat-like. She had big dark eyes and a small waist. Like a wasp's waist, I thought. Malabona thought she was like a wasp, too. God knows, Hibala, she said to my grandmother. One day she will go ving, 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 like a wasp over our heads. Beware of that girl. My blood tells me something. Soon, Dinku Dikai became a hawker. He started a business selling fruit and vegetables from a cart, and Rabone joined us in Standard 5 at school. She wasn't shy, and she soon made a lot of friends. One day at school, when we were all tired because of the midsummer heat, I wrote a note which said, I love you, Iseki. I asked someone behind me to hand it to Rabone. I was copying history notes from the board when suddenly I felt a hard slap behind my ear. When I turned round, I saw Rabone sitting down again in her seat. When our eyes met, she made an angry hissing noise like a snake. It's a noise that only African girls can make. But in a few weeks' time, it had become a habit for me to carry Rabone's books when we walked home together. She told me a lot about the Rand, the Golden City, the big city of Johannesburg. Chapter 6. Malabona and Other People. Our neighbor, Malabona, was about 50. She was thin, and she looked as if she was made of tight pieces of string. She went to the houses in 2nd Avenue giving advice to men and women even if they didn't want it. She always looked people in their eyes. She boasted that she looked everybody directly in their eyes, black or white. Women who were the same age as her thought this was very brave behavior for an African woman. A good wife must obey her mother-in-law. She must be able to wash, cook, clean the house, and look after the children well, she often said. But the young girls we have now for daughters-in-law are stupid and stubborn. Malabona had been married twice, I heard Aunt Dora tell a friend. Her first husband stayed with her for 3 years, then he left her. Her second husband stayed for 2 years before leaving her. They had a daughter who stayed with Malabona. The husband was sorry about that, said Aunt Dora. He didn't want anything on earth to remind him of Malabona. Then there was a third man in Malabona's life who lived with her but did not marry her. They had a son, Joel, and the man stayed with them for 10 years before he left Marabastad. After the men had left, Malabona went into the business of controlling daughters-in-law. Malabona's 2 children, Nkadi and Joel, didn't go higher at school than Standard 8, but she still boasted about them. I have 2 children at Kilnerton High School, she used to say to her neighbors. You have to work, work, work to get them through school. I don't know what I will do when they go to Fort Hare. Fort Hare was the only non-white university college in South Africa in those days. The children were very different from each other. Their mother was strict with them both, but Nkadi was rebellious and would not obey her mother. Joel always obeyed her. We often went to stay at Malabona's house when the adult members of our family were away for a few days. I was embarrassed by the way Joel said, "Yes, Ma, I will, Ma." "All right, Ma," to everything she said. When Nkadi met a young man, she left home. She married him and went to live on 14th Avenue. "I asked them many times to live with me," Malabona said to my grandmother one day. But the boy said to Nkadi that he would not be controlled by his mother-in-law. "And what did she say?" asked my grandmother. "She said that she belongs to him now," she replied. "It's not like it was when I was a girl. In those days, the parents told the girl that the first baby must be born at home. I told her that the anger of her ancestors will fall on her one day." I don't know if the ancestors' anger ever fell on Nkadi, but I do know that about 8 out of 10 educated Africans, most of whom are Christians, still believe in the spirits of their ancestors. Joel, however, married a girl his mother had chosen, the daughter of an old friend. "No, child, that stove is not clean," Malabona said to her. "No, child, you must not sit like that when you are pregnant," she said. "Joel likes his egg boiled, not fried," she said. "Joel does not drink tea," she said. This was how she talked to her daughter-in-law. Anna, Joel's wife, obeyed without question. She behaved as all new wives are told to do by their aunts and uncles on their wedding day. "Anna's ready to explode," said Aunt Dora one day, like someone who has been expecting it for a long time. I went to borrow some sugar and she was arguing with Malabona. "You mustn't argue with Mother, Anna," Joel kept saying to her. Malabona told all the neighbors about her daughter-in-law's bad behavior. Then one day Aunt Dora came in and said, "She's done it." "Who? What?" we asked. "Anna. She has slapped her mother-in-law on the cheek." Everyone on 2nd Avenue was shocked. Some people said, "It's good for Malabona. She's met her match." Then finally Anna left. "She told me herself," said Aunt Dora. "Joel will never keep a wife because a wife has to be his mother's wife as well." We all looked forward to Joel's next wedding to Cuckoo, who was a pretty woman. The bells rang and the church filled up with people. The minister was waiting and Joel, the bridegroom, arrived. But the bride, pretty Cuckoo, never came. "A car with Johannesburg number plates picked her up at her house," people said. "God knows best," Aunt Dora said. "But that sweet girl was never meant for Joel." I remember very well some of the white people in the suburbs whose washing I collected. There was Mr. Goldsmith, who was a middle-aged man with a very red face. He worked at the museum where Aunt Dora's husband also worked. He could easily have brought the washing to the museum in his car. Then I could have collected it from the center of the city instead of going all the way to the suburbs. But he never thought of it. He was always angry. Often he didn't answer the door, but he cursed if I knocked on the window. And then, as I waited under the window, he opened it and threw the bundle at me. He wouldn't look at me. At the end of the month, he threw the envelope containing money at me. He did not care whether I caught it or not. Miss Forster was an alcoholic who looked very old. She always complained to me about things that did not concern me. She complained about the weather and about the noise her neighbors made when they played Afrikaner music at the weekend. She also complained about her brother in Johannesburg who had not sent her money. We called her Ma Bottles because every week she sent me to a bottle store on my way home. I got a shilling for doing this, so I didn't mind. At Mrs. Singer's house, they let me wait in the kitchen while they collected up the bundle of washing. I often sat there with saliva in my mouth because of the warm smell of coffee and eggs and ham. We never had food like this at home. I always remember the dog and the attention they gave it. The girl, as they called their black maid who was probably 25 years old, gave the dog a bowl of fresh tea after its breakfast. Mrs. Singer was always shouting at the girl for not treating the dog well. One day there was another girl working for the Singers because the first girl had been sacked for beating their dog. Since that time, I have never wanted to keep pets.